Isn't that a bit dangerous? I mean, a chap in the village told me the Lord's protected you from the wasting.
You know about the wasting?
Well, only by hearsay. What is the wasting?
The wasting?
Yes.
The wasting is... the wasting.
Ah.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the second episode of my series called Doctor Who, A Journey into Genres. I'm Jessica Dwyer, and I'm really excited about this episode because this one is going to be talking about one of my favorite Doctor Who stories ever, which is called State of Decay, and it was a vampire episode of Doctor Who. Surprise that it would be one of my favorites. And also it starred the fourth Doctor, Tom Baker. And this episode of the series was excellent for many reasons. Not just because of Tom Baker, not just because of vampires, but it was probably one of the coolest meshings of horror and science fiction the show has ever done. And it touches upon the Time Lord myths and everything. It's just really brilliant. Plus, it's gorgeous. I really love the look and of the costumes in this, the design work. The writing in this is great. Just all around one of the best Doctor Who's. So State of Decay was aired in 1980, and it was the second part of the E-Space trilogy, which had Romana being played by Lalla Ward in her second generation. And what was cool about this too was Lalla Ward also played in one of my favorite vampire films, Vampire Circus, where she was the second, or I'm sorry, the girl twin in the vampire twins that were part of the circus group, and they infamously attacked the kids in the Hall of Mirrors. But so that was really neat to touch upon that part of it as well. But back to the episode. State of Decay takes place, like I said, in the E-Space trilogy, and it's also to be noted that this is the first time that Adric is actually a companion to the Doctor. Adric sort of became the Wesley Crusher of Doctor Who as the know-it-all smart kid who ends up sacrificing himself for the good of humanity later on. Yeah, very sad. Anyway, State of Decay takes place on this planet in E-Space where the Doctor and Romana and Adric and the TARDIS land along with K9, and they discover that this is a very strange planet because there's only one settlement in the whole planet, and it's stuck in this sort of weirdly medieval type of a thing where the peasants there aren't allowed to have any kind of technology or any kind of education, and there's one giant spire of a castle where these three leaders are there, and there's a king, a queen, and they have an advisor. And it's kind of funny because the advisor seems to be in more control than the king and the queen are. Anyway, the rulers are Zargo, Akon, and Camilla. Great name. And guess what? They're vampires, and that's kind of easily figured out by the way they look. Their makeup is very bat-like, and they're very pale and gothy, and they know more than any of the others. And when Romana cuts her finger, Camilla seems very interested in that. So, surprise, they're the vampires. Well, as the series goes on, we find out that they are the ones that are not allowing the education for anybody there, and technology is something that is shunned. But there are rebels who have discovered this technology that out of nowhere, and it turns out that as the Doctor helps the rebels, and he figures out there is something very wrong here, that these three were actually the astronauts of the spaceship that was drawn into the planet by this mysterious force. And it turns out the mysterious force is a giant vampire, and by giant I mean he's a planet drainer. And the three astronauts are turned into sort of smaller versions of vampires like the ones we know about, and they have been inbreeding and dumbing down the remainder of these settlers there over the centuries and years to keep them basically as cattle for this giant vampire and themselves. And the Doctor discovers that the castle's in fact the spaceship. So as it progresses, the Doctor also talks about stories he's heard on Gallifrey. And this is one of the coolest bits, because you find out that Time Lords and vampires are like mortal enemies, or immortal enemies, as you will. And Rassilon, who was like the biggest badass of the Time Lords, and was very evilly played by Timothy Dalton recently. Back in the classic Who, he was the badass of the Time Lords, and he was also one of the smartest and the greatest of them. And he created these battleships, because the Time Lords and the vampires were at war, and Rassilon created a bow ship that would shoot these giant steel bolts in through the vampires' hearts and kill them. It was the only way they could do it. So sort of your stake in the heart routine came from that. So the Doctor, to figure out a way to stop the giant vampire from coming back to life, because as they discovered, the inside of that castle/spaceship, all the fuel tanks are filled with blood that they have collected over the years to feed this thing. And they're getting ready to sacrifice Romana to him as like the taste of vengeance for him, since she's a Time Lord. So the Doctor figures a way to shoot one of the modules from the spaceship up and then back down directly into the vampire. And doing so, it kills the bad 3 vampires and frees the planet from them. So it's a really amazing episode. I just love it so much because of all of this just neat mythology that it touches upon, the way that it meshes this horror genre, and the sets and everything. Just, it looks so Hammer, and the science fiction part of it is in there too. So it's just it's a perfect representation of why I'm doing this, to show everyone how Doctor Who is this perfect example of how you can just jump around into different genres and have it all make sense. And I love the look of the 3, like I said, the 3 main vampires in this, and I can't believe no one's cosplaying them. I've never seen anybody cosplay these guys. I've never seen any pictures of it. So, Dragon Con people and Gallifrey 1 people, I don't know why you guys haven't done the 3 leaders from State of Decay. Come on. They're made for this. They're beautiful. Their costumes are great. Their makeup is beautiful. But I just wanted to touch upon one other thing really quickly before we wrap this one up. That not just in this episode of Doctor Who, but after this, they actually reference the Time Lord versus the vampires in a couple of other places in the Doctor Who universe. There are a few novels, like there's Blood Harvest and Goth Opera. And I think there's another one like Damaged Goods as well that talks about, and Goth Opera and Blood Harvest both are very specifically about this whole vampire versus the Time Lords thing. There's also audio by Big Finish that does this as well, like the Bernice Summerfeld ones have a big chunk about that in them. And there's even one that I think it's the 5th Doctor actually takes on Vlad the Impaler, and yeah, I love that idea. This is part of the reason why I'm completely about having Peter Capaldi's Doctor take on vampires, like real vampires, like do a real proper Hammer vampire episode for him, because we already know from Capaldi himself that he's a huge Hammer nut, and I would just, yeah, need to take a moment and think about that. Okay. But the other thing I wanted to touch upon really quickly is the fact that if you're interested in Doctor Who, or want to see some more stuff with Tom Baker, he is no stranger to horror at all. He's done quite a few things, actually. Not only Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which is a fantasy / horror / Ray Harryhausen fest, where he played the bad guy, and he was excellent in that. But he is in Vault of Horror, the original film. That's a nice little sister piece to Tales from the Crypt. He is in that, as well as a great movie that, if you can find it, you're lucky, called The Freak Maker / The Mutants, with Donald Pleasance. He also was in the Frankenstein: The Untold Story with James Mason and David McCallum. He played the captain of the ship that Frankenstein's talking to. So he is no stranger to it either, and he has done also. Funnily enough, he also played Sherlock Holmes in a Hound of the Baskervilles miniseries that was done, I think, in the 80s as well, by the BBC. So, Tom Baker, we love you. He is amazing, and as I said, State of Decay, if you love vampires, if you love gothic horror, and you want to get into Doctor Who, this is a great one for you to do it with. There's a few more that I will talk about in later episodes that are very Hammer-esque in what they cover. One of them that really stands out that I will talk about is Pyramids of Mars. But there are some other ones too that are just excellent, and they cross over into that gothic lit territory so well. So yeah, we will talk about those in future episodes. But here's some clips from the stuff that I've talked about. And I hope you enjoy, and thank you for listening, and Viva Doctor Who.
For all who are willing to pay the price, we invite you to go through the mirror of life. Dora!
"15 years ago, we thought we'd killed a demon, but he's been waiting to kill us.
15 years, Cousin Mitterhouse. But now we are here to free you, to give you life.
But must they all die?
All!
I mocked at talk of vampires. I was wrong. I've seen proof, terrifying proof. People have been killed in villages, killed by vampires.
None of you will live. Your children will die to give me back my life.
Your child is missing. Your child is missing.
Relax. Get ready to have fun, because you've got a date with somebody special. The walking, crawling nightmares from the pits of hell. The mutations.
You may think you are normal, but you are all the product of mutations. Your ancestors, our ancestors, were freaks.
Enter a world of the twisted and deformed. A world of monsters and madmen.
Mr. Lynch! Aren't you going to have a drink with us to help celebrate Kathy's birthday?
You expect me to sit down with a bunch of freaks?
He's one of us.
We accept you.
He's one of us.
Yes.
Our brother.
Shut up!
Our loving father.
Or I can say all I want! Get back! Get
It took 2 million years for man to evolve, and only 24 hours to create the mutations. It's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. It can be horrifying. The mutations.
Enter death's waiting room, if you dare. Below the crypt lies the vault of horror, a treasure chest of the macabre. Madness, voodoo, vampires, torture, and terror. All the things that make life worth living.
That's how it is. And how it always will be.
The Vault of Horror.